Welcome to Bringing Jesus Back into Focus. I'm Christopher John Joseph. I've just published a book, second edition of the Gospels of Jesus Unplugged, to clarify who Jesus was, what he was saying, who the divine loving spiritual creator really is that he was at one with. The main points are that the Jews worship two different gods. Instead of being honest and calling their war god Mars and their god of peace and love Pax, like the Romans, or being honest like the Greeks, who called their filthy war god Ares and their god of peace Irene. Different temples, different names, different life forces, light and dark, love and hate, so love and kill. And the Egyptians had Sekhmet, their brutal war god, and another god that was calming. Different temples, different names, different forces, light versus dark. The Jews had their stinking filthy war god too, and they chose to call that war god Yahweh. But what we have to say is, those of us who are normal and intelligent and logical, that's Yahweh one. Because we can't say Yahweh is an evil, stinking, murdering war god, even though Yahweh is, because there's another Yahweh. There isn't another God called the Jewish word for love, whatever that is, or the Hebrew word for love. They should have called the other God by a different name if they were honest, but they were dishonest. They were lying and they were deceptive. They're deceivers. Let's call our loving God, because the loving God is there in Leviticus. If a foreigner, like a Palestinian, is amongst you, then treat them as if they're Jewish and love them as if they are Jewish. Well, we can see how many Jews do that in Israel, don't we? So that's the loving God, you see. They prefer to follow the war god, most Israelis. They love the war god. They love killing. They always have, the Jews. And so did the Romans, and so did the Greeks, and so did the Egyptians. Don't get me wrong. So does Putin. He's his own little war god, little boy, who's gone insane. He's a rock ape, just a gangster, a murderer, mass murderer. He doesn't even believe in God, What strikes me with Putin is the hypocrisy. I see him in these Jewish Greek Orthodox churches where he's there at a cross and he's doing this. Oh, he's got the sign of Jesus on him. Oh, I've got to go and murder some more Ukrainian women now and babies. I've got to go now. Oh, bless you, says the Greek Orthodox Jew priest. They're just Jew priests. Anyone who blesses someone like that, a mass murderer, a killer in a church of Jesus, they're just Jews. They're Jewish Christians. So this is the trouble with the Jewish Christian churches. They're Jewish. Jesus is just an addition to their Jewish religion. But they've got the loving creator there, which is a different God, because Jesus is there. Jesus is at one with the loving creator. He's not at one with Yahweh, because Yahweh's two gods. So how can you be at one with two opposing gods? It's impossible. Jesus said so. You can't serve two gods. He's talking about the two gods the Jewish worship. You either serve the loving God and you love the foreigners who are across the river there, or you serve the war god and you go down to Jericho and murder them all, steal all their treasure and steal their land. You can't serve both those gods. That's what Jesus is saying in that particular saying. You can't serve two masters. The Jews were worshipping two gods. But he couldn't say it openly because they would have stoned him to death. That would have been blasphemy. If he'd have said, Yahweh is a two-headed perverted God, they would have gone, right, we've got you, pal, come over here, stone him to death, blasphemy. There's only one Yahweh. No, there's two, says Jesus. So he had to be very careful, very wise in the way he spoke. But they still murdered him, of course, because he was getting more and more confronting with their war god, their stinking war god, Yahweh one. He even said at one point, you're children of your father Satan. He was a murderer and a liar from the start, as all war gods are murderers, and you do the desires and lusts of the war god, Satan. Now that was really confronting. I'm surprised they didn't kill him outright then. But he still tried to hang on to get more of the message through, which is a universal teaching that he and Buddha both gave. We all have a perfect spiritual body with us, a perfect spiritual mind of love. It's inside me, it's inside you, it's inside all of us. Even these mass murdering satanic children like Netanyahu, Putin, the entire Israeli army, entire Russian army, they're all satanic dark shadow figures now. They've moved out of their spiritual body, which is now devoid of spiritual life force from heaven. There's nothing coming into it. And their little lights in there are tiny. And that's how little they'll be when they die. And they'll be covered in oceans of darkness. That's their living hell that they'll have to go through after they die, unless they repent. So I had to rewrite the Gospels, not rewrite them, but provide a better translation. You know, Jesus is coming back on the clouds to cause starvation, wars, and famine. He fed the hungry, he healed the sick, he said, love your enemies. I mean, it's stunning to think that these Jewish Christian churches who worship Yahweh, the two-headed God Yahweh, not the God of Jesus, but they say, well, we're the Catholic Christian church, we're this Christian church. And they all say, oh, Jesus is coming back on the clouds to be like Satan. And the God of Jesus is going to be there to make sure all this destruction and murder and sickness and suffering occurs. Yep, they're going to make it happen. They don't even read his words. They read them, they just go in one ear and out the other. They love the Jewish war god, you see, Jewish Christians. They love the Jewish war god. We hate the Jewish war god. We have nothing to do with that stinking filth. As with Mars and Sekhmet and Ares, I wouldn't go into their temples if I was around in those days. I would have gone to Pax and Eugene, or Irene, the Temple of Peace and Love. I would have been over there talking to that God, because I'm a pacifist Christian in this world, and I'm in the minority of Christians. There's only a few of us left who are true Christians, not many. And there are many good Christians who are Jewish Christians and who go to heaven because they follow Jesus. They ignore the Jewish religion, Old Testament, and the war god in it. They have no interest in Revelation. They just love Jesus. And they love helping people and working in charities. See, they're following him. They're just ignoring the Jewish poison, which you have to do. If you're going to stay in a Jewish Christian church, you got to ignore the Jewish religion and ignore the book of Revelation. Otherwise, you'll get caught up in the trap, the Jewish trap. So this book is free of all those traps. All the important teachings of Jesus are there, and I've tried to write them in a language and a style which is still traditional in a sense, that it's the dialogue of the Gospels, but the language is, instead of saying God the Father, I say our loving spiritual creator. And I use the word she instead of he, simply because the word pronoun she is both male and female pronouns in the one word. And also, you've got to do everything you can to cut ties with the Jewish religion, because it's a real serious poison, that religion. And in the Christian religion, it's hard to get children out of it. They get trapped in it, and then they become condemning, and they judge you, and they say, oh, Buddhists aren't going to go to heaven, and Muslims sure aren't. Atheists, they're never going to go to heaven. So they become Jews, you see. That's what Jews, we're the chosen ones, and all that sort of rubbish. It's all egotistical crap. So I had to write the Gospels again. Oh, blimey, that was interesting. And I've really enjoyed doing it. So this is the second edition, so make sure you get the second edition if you want to buy it. It's available around the world in March 2026. It's coming on the internet right this week, the second week of March, I see it appearing. It was just published on the 11th. I've done my very best to represent Jesus as love and non-violence and the loving spiritual creator, and the way to heaven is to get your spiritual body ready to leave at death. And your body of flesh does not rise up from the dirt again. Jesus never said that. He said quite the opposite. He said, feed it to the vultures. He said that in the Gospels. The Jewish Christians don't even look at that. They won't study that because it interferes with their Jewish rubbish that your dead body of flesh rises on the third day, like Jonah in the whale and all this Jewish stuff. They're all what I call Jewish overlays. He's a sacrificial lamb. His blood cleanses you, just like the Jews used to murder a lamb and blood cleansed them of their sin. What a lot of rubbish. You murder an innocent animal and that's going to cleanse you of sin? I would have thought that is a sin. You see, it's a distortion. And the distortion, they had no idea that the gods only love the Jews. They knew they had a loving God there, Yahweh. They had two gods, but they refused to acknowledge it. They wanted the loving God to be the same as their murdering war god. And so, of course, they did that. That's a deception. So they could, have their cake and eat it too. Murder and kill, and God loves them killing and murdering and loves them when they don't. Oh, really? Let's get on. Mary and Martha. Luke 10:38. We're up to Luke, the Gospel of Luke. I think this is part 16, I think, of... part 2 of Luke, I should say. Sorry, part 2 of Luke. Luke 10:38-42. As they went into a certain village, a woman named Martha welcomed Jesus into her house. And she had a sister called Mary, who also sat at the feet of Jesus to hear him teach. But Martha was occupied with serving everyone, and she approached Jesus and said, Teacher, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Tell her to help me. And Jesus answered, Martha, Martha, you are worried and troubled about many little things, but only one thing is needed, and Mary has chosen to participate in that one good thing, which will not be taken away from her. Author, In the correct Thomas Gospel parable about the fisherman who found the one good and great fish, representing his eternal spiritual body, soul, mind of love, and true life, he let go of all the other little fish. So in the Thomas parable that Jesus gave, the correct one about the fisherman, Matthew's is a false, altered one, perverted one. In that parable about the one good great fish, the fisherman caught many fish, but he kept the one good great fish and threw the little ones back into the sea. There's little. Now here we've got a similar situation, and Jesus is sort of pointing out the same thing. It is being echoed here again by Jesus saying Mary has chosen the one good thing by listening to his spiritual teachings that awakens her eternal spiritual life that we all need to enter the heavenly spiritual world. You see, Mary's chosen to listen to Jesus because he's going to save her spiritual life to heaven. That's eternal. Mary's physical body dies. It doesn't rise again from the earth or anything. She was really interested to know how she can get to heaven. Martha was busy serving cups of tea and toast and sardines on toast, whatever. This is the most important thing of all, to get your body ready to leave, your spiritual body. So she was listening to Jesus because he knew how to do it. It was really important. I think it's very important for all of us. Now, compared to the many little material things that Martha was concerned about. So Martha was concerned about, serving others. She was serving, and Jesus said to serve others, but she was getting a bit uptight about it. I'm busy handing out these sardines on toast and pouring cups of tea to everyone, and I'm not listening to the teachings much because I'm busy doing this. But she should have put it down and did that after Jesus finished teaching. She was missing out on the most important thing of all, getting instructions on how to become spiritually awakened now before her body of flesh died. And then she'd be safe in heaven forever, as we all will be if we follow his way or Buddha's way to Nirvana. So they're both pacifists, you see. That's why you can trust them. It doesn't mean you trust everyone who teaches what they're teaching and amasses fortunes out of them, or goes and kills in their name. Well, they're not Christians or Buddhists anyway, are they? So it's a beautiful little dialogue, that. Yeah, Martha, you are worried about and troubled about many little things. See, it's like the fisherman who put the little fish back, his little identities, earthly identities. He held on to the one good and great thing, his spiritual identity of love and non-violence. That's the one good great fish. You've got to find it here, though, amongst all the other little fish that you could become. A billionaire, well, that's just a little fish compared to your spiritual eternal identity, because that billionaire dies. The spiritual identity doesn't. Keep connected to heaven. Luke 11:5-8. Jesus said, "Which of you shall have a friend and go to him at midnight and say to him, 'Friend, lend me 3 loaves, for a friend of mine has come to visit on his journey, and I have nothing to set before him?' And he will answer from within, 'Do not trouble me, the door is now shut, my children are with me in bed, so I cannot rise and give to you.' I say to you, though he will not rise and give to him because he is a friend, yet because of his persistence, he will rise and give him as many as he needs." Author: Our loving spiritual creator answers our prayers, but not always in the way or time that we wish for. She sees more than us, and as long as we stay facing her in connection with her love, she will provide us with spiritual help for our life on earth. We only need ask once, but the material world and circumstances can delay or alter results, so we must always stay close to her in spirit. So the main thing to take out of this, where Jesus is saying, he paints the guy who's gone to bed with his children. He couldn't be bothered getting out to help the friend who's calling out. He's already gone to sleep. But, look, he gets up because otherwise, he'll never get any sleep if the person keeps yelling. Well, that's not the loving creator. Loving creator, I'm having a snooze. And I'm going, I'm dying of a fungal infection. I need help here. Are you there? Are you there? It's not like that. Oh, I better help Chris with his neurotoxic fungal infection in his lungs, otherwise he'll keep asking me. He'll be asking me all night, calling out to me because he's in such pain and suffering. It's not like that. What he's saying is, don't lose your connection with heaven. Don't lose your connection with the loving spiritual creator who created your spiritual body and life and spiritual soul, mind of love. You may be in need, of course, but still connect to her. Think of her. Think of heaven. If you do that, you're connected. Heaven knows everything about you. Heaven knows exactly what you need here in the earthly suffering world of dirt, dualistic world of evil and good. They know what you need to get to heaven. They know you need to be strengthened in spirit most of all. So what we ask for may not come in the way we think we need. They may send something to us in another way that strengthens our resolve to remain spiritual. And we may not even receive the thing we asked for, but somehow they help us to be even more dependent on them, more belief in them, possibly sometimes because we don't receive a healing or we don't receive what we need. So we know, well, heaven's there. I know it's there no matter what happens to me now. I know heaven's there. I'm just going to stay ready as best I can, even though I'm in great need of something in this world of dirt and evil and suffering. And there's love here too, but all love here comes from heaven. So that's the way to think about that saying there. Don't disconnect yourself from heaven or the loving spiritual creator of your spiritual body, even though things might be going quite badly for you and you really need some desperate help from someone. Often in this world people will abandon you. I've had that feeling. And you think to yourself, wow, I can't depend on people, other children, earthly children. So by me being abandoned myself, my experience, it has driven me closer to God and Jesus. It's quite amazing, to the loving spiritual creator in heaven. I think much more about them than ever because I've been abandoned and refused help here on the earth world by children who are judgmental or egotistical or whatever it is, or evil or something. But they've driven me more towards heaven because I stay connected and I forgive them anyway. So you forgive them so you can keep connected to heaven. Keep the word. Luke 11:27-28. And as Jesus was speaking, a certain woman from the crowd raised her voice and said to him, "Blessed is the womb that bore you and the breast that nursed you." But Jesus replied, "No, rather blessed are those who hear the word of our loving spiritual creator and keep it." I mean, his mum must have been pretty special. But he says, there's even a higher thing you're blessed with. If you understand the way to get to heaven, the words I'm giving you will lead you there. You'll be really blessed, even more blessed than me having a good mum, or my mum being blessed because she's my mum or whatever. And Mary must have been a beautiful person for sure. Material wealth versus spiritual wealth, Luke 12:13-21. One from the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." But he replied to him, "Man, who made me a judge or partitioner over you?" And he said to them, "Take heed and be on guard against avarice and greed, for one's true life does not consist in the abundance of the material things he possesses." Then he taught them a parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded plentifully. And he thought within himself, saying, "What shall I do, since I have no room to store my crops?" So he said, "I'll pull down my barns and build greater ones, and there I will store up all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, you have many goods laid up for many years now. Take it easy, eat, drink, and be merry." But our loving spiritual creator said to him, "Mindless one, this night you will die, and your soul will be called. Then whose will those things be which you have stored up?" This is the one who lays up material treasures for his temporary physical life, but is not spiritually enriched by using the loving spiritual life force of his spirit to produce eternal spiritual fruits of heaven. Author. Jesus again directs us to become primarily spiritual children, filled with the loving spiritual life force of our loving spiritual creator. When we pass through our death experience, only our spiritual body and soul leave to hopefully enter the heavenly spiritual world, being rich in spirit is all that matters at that important time. Remember, when I die alone. The experience is only mine. I must be ready to pass through that with the strength behind me, my past, of having lived a reasonably good life. I'll just put it in those terms, if not a very good life. At least just trying to be good. If that's behind me, then I've got a substantial correct direction from behind me heading towards the straight and narrow way. If I've been on the straight and narrow way for some time, day after day, week after week, month, year after year, and even if I wander off, come straight back, if I've been able to do that over and over and over, then I'm re-establishing a very strong, direct path and link to heaven. And then when the death experience is coming, and boom, you go into it, and you're completely blown away by the screaming agony and torture of the death experience, where you can't think about heaven anymore for a little while, until this piece of meat stops moving in the middle of this biological body of dirt called the heart muscle. Once that bit of meat stops moving, that's it. Your entire biological system shuts down. The brain-mind shuts down. There's just blackness. As far as the body of flesh, there's just darkness. But then the spirit leaves the body. And it's at that time, that's the important time, when I have to have a richness of love that I've been living out of already before that moment. Because all love comes from heaven and passes through your spiritual body into this world. And you manifest it through the body of flesh that eventually dies. So you have a limited time to manifest it. But the more you manifest the spiritual love coming into your spiritual body, like the wellspring bubbling up within you, as Jesus described it, it's an eternal, infinite amount of love, never ending, if you're connected, if the wellspring isn't covered with dirty, filthy things or poison. If it's a pure wellspring, if you're good and kind and honest and decent, that wellspring of love's in you all the time, and it flows out of your physical body to others, flows out of your spiritual body through your physical body, so spiritual to physical to other children. We manifest it through the temporary physical body while we're here, but what that does is it consolidates your spiritual identity. It strengthens your spiritual body, and your soul mind of love becomes strong and alive and living. And they don't care about the body dying. Your spirit doesn't really care. It just leaves the body. To what degree you're prepared to be in the presence of a pure, loving spiritual being in a pure, loving spiritual world where all the children are extremely beautiful and clean, that's all that matters. Faithful servant, Luke 12:35-38. Jesus said, be always ready with your lamps. Yeah, and basically that last parable, I mean, the guy, he forgot about wanting to be spiritual. He left that journey and he just wanted to enjoy his grapes and olives and have a nice sensual time, for a few years until it ran out again. So, of course, the basic principle of that parable, by the way, is just the guy wanted to enjoy earthly life, physical sensations. And he was going to forget about his spiritual development. That's the basic message there as well. Sorry. There are so many things you can draw and talk about from his parables. Luke 12:35, Jesus said, be always ready with your lamps burning. It's like the 10 maidens, their lamps burning, their spiritual light glowing, their spiritual love on fire, a light in this world, a living light and a lamp to others. Be always ready with your lamps burning, and be like men who wait to join their master after his wedding, so that when he calls, you may open your door and go to him immediately. Blessed are those servants. When opening your door is like when you die. That's what that means. Blessed are those servants who are watching out for him when he calls. Truly I say to you, he will be ready to receive them and have them sit down to eat with him and serve them himself. He may call you to come in the second watch or the third watch, and blessed are those ready and waiting to hear his call. Now, I don't know if I'm blessed enough to be ready to enter the heavenly spiritual world, but it says here, truly he will be ready to receive them and have them sit down to eat with him and serve them himself. So Jesus may serve me sort of like a scone or something, a cup of tea. I don't think so. This is all, human terminology. Of course, we'll be there, or hopefully we all will be, or those who want to be there will go there. But it's a beautiful thing, but always be ready. You may open your door and go to him immediately. Be ready to open your door and go to him immediately. That's the correct translation. He's not coming back to be here with you. You've got to go to be where he is. So you've got to be ready to leave when he calls. Author, Jesus reminds us that we will all pass through our death experience at some time unknown to us. Therefore, he tells us to always keep our spiritual light of love burning brightly, so we are ready to die to the flesh and be called into the heavenly spiritual world in our living spiritual body, where he now is with our loving spiritual creator, and he will be there to greet us home. Barren fig tree. Luke 13:6-9. Jesus spoke this parable. A certain man had a fig tree planted in his vineyard, and he came seeking fruit on it and found none. Then he said to the keeper of his vineyard, "Look, for 3 years I have come seeking fruit on this fig tree and find none. Cut it down, for it is a waste of ground." But he answered, "Sir, let it be for this year also, until I dig around it and fertilize it with manure. Then if it bears fruit, all will be well. But if not, after that you can cut it down." Author. For things to grow, they need nourishment. Now, being a gardener, I know that, as most people do anyway. Our spirits grow through receiving the spiritual words that help awaken our spiritual body and soul mind of love, which are then further nourished by the loving spiritual life force from the heavenly spiritual world of our loving Creator. This tree was undernourished. It wasn't bearing enough fruit. And it happens with plants. To increase fruit, you might use a certain type of fertilizer. You've got potassium and you've got nitrogen, and nitrogen will increase leaf growth, for example. Potassium might help produce flower growth and fruit set and things. So if a tree is undernourished of a certain element, it may not produce much fruit. Now, if I'm undernourished with the element, say, of forgiveness, oh, I hate those people, I'm never going to forgive them. Well, my spiritual growth will be stunted by the lack of that nourishment of forgiveness. Oh, I've got a heap of money in the bank. Oh, wow, I've got 10 million. Oh, wow, boy, I eat anything I want. Oh, get out of the way, you homeless person. I'm not nourished with compassion and generosity. I'm starving, you see. I'm starving myself because I'm so filthy rich. And I love that term, filthy rich. That's what it is, filth. It's become filth. It blocks love flowing. So I'm not being nourished by generosity. I've got plenty of money, here you have some. Oh, you're in need. Oh, look, I'll buy that for you. I'm not being nourished by generosity. And of course, when you see homeless people on the street, some people abuse them. You know, get out. You shouldn't be here. Get out of here. You're making the place look terrible. Another person comes along, full of nourished with compassion. Can I get you anything? Can I help you in any way? Do you need a blanket or anything? Can I buy you some food? That person's nourished with compassion. The person tells them to get out of there because you're stinking up the place. They have no compassion. They're lacking the nourishment of compassion. They can't bear fruit, spiritual fruit. So it's all about bearing spiritual fruits from your spiritual body and your spiritual mind that grows, flowers, opens up into an enormous, beautiful, ripened spiritual child of the loving spiritual Creator. The fruit is you become a spiritual child of the loving spiritual Creator, and you are the fruit of God on earth. You're a spiritual child on earth, temporarily in a physical body that's going to die. We can't get out of pain and suffering if you're born here. We can only pass through it in a good way. That's the only thing we can do. But at the same time, we bring that goodness and love of heaven through back into this evil world. This is an evil world. I mean, there's evil here. You can't say it's not an evil world. Evil exists here. But love is here. But all that love comes from the other world of love. So we have to bring as much of that in as we can and try to push the evil back. So that's what we do. We're the lights in the darkness. Be humble. Luke 14:7-14. Jesus noticed that those invited to a dinner chose the best place first. He then said to them, "When you are invited by anyone to a feast, do not sit down in the best place, for one more honourable than you may also have been invited. And the host may come to you and say, 'Give up your place to this man,' and then in embarrassment you take a lower place. But instead, when you are invited, go and sit down in the lowest place. And then if the host comes to you, he may invite you to sit in a higher place. Then you will be honoured in the presence of those who sit at table with you. For whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. And he continued, when you give a dinner or supper, do not ask your friends, your brothers, your relatives, nor rich neighbours, who may invite you back, and you will be repaid. But when you give a feast, invite the poor, the maimed, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed, because they cannot repay you. Give of yourself. But you shall receive your blessing when you rise in spirit from your body of flesh. See, everything you give to others here selflessly, it's waiting for you to receive in heaven. That is to say, the more love you give selflessly to others, whether it's money, food, clothing, shelter, you go to someone who's sick and stay with them, you care for someone who's sick. It's all selfless, 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 selfless. You can't love someone unless you're selfless. If you're selfish, love won't flow out of you. Jesus is simply saying, helping someone providing they help you back, that's not spiritual. That's weighing things up. You don't weigh up love, you just let it flow out of you endlessly. And the joy you have is that you're filled with this love flowing through you. That's your reward. That's your joy. That's your peace of mind. You can't buy peace of mind in a shop. You have to become at one with peace and love to have it. Author, those who are lowly and humble treat all others with respect and are happy to remain a simple child of our loving spiritual Creator. They are content within themselves, have loving equanimity towards all, and need no special recognition or special treatment, whereas arrogant and egotistical children need to feel superior and more important, so they look down on others, treating them as being inferior, less deserving, and demand privileged treatment. They do not realize our loving spiritual Creator loves all her children with the same love, and we are all equally important and valuable in her eyes. Those with their feet on the ground, who are level with all other children, are stable and cannot fall. But those who live in a high ivory tower of arrogance, above all other children, will one day fall and come back down to earth. Jesus inspires us as spiritual children to care for those who cannot easily care for themselves or repay us in any way for the care and love we give to them. The love we give to these special children of our loving Creator who are in need will be waiting in the heavenly spiritual world for us to receive back from our loving Creator after our body of flesh dies. See, this links directly into the sheep and the goats parable, when the loving Creator, when you're in her presence, he says, thank you for feeding me, thank you for giving me a drink and giving me some clothes and giving me some shelter. This is the loving spiritual Creator, mind you, saying this to you in the heavenly spiritual world when you get there. And we will discover that you didn't need any of those things. You're the spiritual loving Creator. When did I ever do that to you? And of course the beautiful answer that Jesus gives from the loving spiritual Creator is, whenever you did it to the least of one of my children, you did it to me. It's such a beautiful, beautiful saying. That it is supreme. It's one of my top 3 or 4. So beautiful. Letting go to follow Jesus. We'll have a read of one more and then we'll go to the next segment. Luke 14:25-33. Jesus spoke to those following him, for anyone wishing to be my disciple, they must love their father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, and even their own life, less than my spiritual way. And whoever does not carry the cross of their body of flesh and follow me in spirit cannot be my disciple. For which of you intending to build a tower does not first sit down and count the cost and whether he has enough to finish it? For if he has laid down the foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it will mock him, saying, this man began to build and was not able to finish. Or what king going to make war against another king does not sit down first and consider whether he is able with 10,000 to meet him who comes against him with 20,000? Or while the other is still a great way off, he sends a delegation and asks for a condition of peace. So likewise, whoever of you cannot let go of all that he possesses cannot be my disciple. author. Full spiritual commitment would make us all a full-time shepherd like Jesus. We're talking about here about full-on spiritual commitment. You become a priest, a monk, a nun, a spiritual teacher, and whatever your tradition is. Teaching the spiritual truths of life about heaven and how to prepare to enter the heavenly spiritual world after we pass through our death experience. So that's a real full spiritual commitment. But so is working in a charitable organisation. Your spiritual work is all to do with charity. That's a very big commitment too. Beautiful. These are the leaders of spiritual congregations, supported by the congregation for all their material needs, just as Jesus and the disciples were. But we can all be shepherd disciples to some degree within our own family, close circle of friends, neighbours, workmates, or even the homeless children on the streets. As long as we are committed to living a spiritual life of love and non-violence, guided by the way that Jesus taught, we are all his disciples. Our spiritual commitment to the way of love provides us with the ability to prioritise the important spiritual practices we must do in our life over the mundane, less important material things. So while Jesus is initially saying, look, you've got to be fully committed to be spiritual, otherwise you're not like me. You're not a full spiritual child of the loving Creator on earth. And that's correct. What he's saying there is correct. To be fully committed to be spiritual, that becomes your primary identity. And then the physical flesh goes behind. Your primary is at the front. Your primary is the eternal spiritual body that leaves at the point of death. Jesus is saying, you really have to become the spiritual child fully awakened. Be fully committed like me. Because he did wake up and he could work miracles. And he was going to heaven, guaranteed. He wants us to be the same. So he doesn't want us to start building a spiritual life, but not really be able to finish it. Like he's saying there, you got to build a tower, but you haven't got everything you need to finish it. So he's saying make sure you've got everything you need to become spiritual. And then go ahead and build your spiritual tower of love. But finish it. And to finish the spiritual tower of love and non-violence, you need all the characteristics that Jesus teaches in his words. Love, compassion, forgiveness, non-violence, equanimity, generosity, reaching out to help those who are in great need. They're the building blocks of your spiritual tower, and you need them all to complete the tower. It's a spiritual identity. It's your spiritual body. It's your spiritual mind of love, which is at one with love. You've got to build it now while you've got a chance. He gives you the instructions. He tells you how to build it. He gives you the names of the building blocks. Forgiveness, compassion, equanimity, love, non-violence. Help those who have fallen down. Don't judge, don't condemn. Turn the other cheek, love your enemy. He gives you the instructions and all the building blocks to build your spiritual home in heaven, which is your spiritual life now here on earth, which once it's fully completed and fully awakened like his was, or Buddha's, you will leave at death and go to heaven because you're ready. You've built your spiritual body using the words he gave. As he said, he who listens to my words and understands them and follows them will not taste death. And they will be in heaven with me, because that's where he went. We'll end on that. That's pretty positive. All you got to do is follow his words and do them. Oh, I like his words. Do I have to do them as well? Yeah. So that's a beautiful. I love his words. You see, I was blessed by heaven for sure. My mother had what I call intelligent faith. Lorraine, there she is. There's Lorraine. One of the most beautiful children that ever walked the earth. Lillian Lorraine Ramsey, come Morgan, and she was so beautiful, and we had such intelligent discussions about spiritual teachings of Jesus, and she loved me reading the Buddhist teachings to her as well. I said, what do you think of this, Mum? This is the monk's lecture, and I'd read the lecture of the monk's lecture that I went to the Institute to listen to, and she'd go, yep, yes, no, that's correct. See, if it rings true, love, non-violence, you must fix yourself up, be clean, be ready. If that's what it's about, yep, that's correct, she'd say. That's correct, yep. But if I tried to read the book of Revelations to her, oh, blimey, she'd probably fall asleep. It's just a load of rubbish. So, she wasn't interested in any Jewish poison stuff at all. She was blessed. And she was really the most beautiful child I've ever met on earth, and happened to be my mother. And she had the most intelligent spiritual Christian faith I've ever met of anyone on earth. And she happened to be my mother. And she was truly a saint. But I'm only the son of a saint. And my father was very hard working and employed people and fed them and clothed them and housed them. Some of them worked for him for 40 years. And it was extremely stressful. It took a heavy toll on him. Running a business where employing, around 100 people is what he employed at the peak of it before it sort of declined. It's a lot of stress. And but all those people, a lot of them really loved him. He gave some handicapped people jobs, elderly people jobs. He kept people on. He didn't make a lot of money out of it, but the people he employed really admired him because he built it up by himself. It was his business. But it took a heavy toll on him. It was very stressful. And but he fed them, clothed them. They bought houses because of him. So he sort of fed their earthly bodies, clothed their earthly bodies, provided their earthly bodies with shelter. He wasn't a spiritual teacher. My mother was the spiritual teacher. She was the glowing, pure spirit. He was the manifestation of love in the material world, employing people. And he was an engineer, so a very practical person. My mother was totally spiritual, but also highly gifted and intelligent. So I've inherited what I would call intelligent faith. Intelligent spiritual faith of another world I can't see. But as long as it's logical and it falls into good alignment and makes sense. So you've got to get rid of the Jewish poison. Please remember, the Jews worship two different Yahwehs. They lie about it. Okay, that's their problem. It shouldn't be our problem. The Jewish religion should not be in Christian churches. Put it on the shelf with the Quran and Buddha's teachings and the Baha'i faith and the Bhagavad Gita and the Vedic scriptures. Put it up there with the other religions. It's not the Christian religion. The Christian religion is the words of Jesus Christ. And religion is a spiritual way to wake up and go to heaven. A spiritual way to become spiritual. He teaches you how to become enlightened. They're his words. His words save you. He said that 17 times. I'll wake you up, he says. Listen to my words. And understand them. And then live out of it. Oh, there's the hard part. It's a challenge. Why not take it up? It's great. And if we support each other, that'll be good. Okay, well that's part 2, I think, of Luke. And we'll move on to the next part. Always remember, love your way to heaven. It's the only way you'll get in. Or hate your way to hell. And many there are that go that way, as Jesus said. And as we can see in the world today, the satanic warmongers. They're all heading to hell at the moment. What can we do? Stop. Don't go there. That's about all we can do. Bye for now.